Hey there, Jason here from Lean Change. Today I'm going to go over some of our state of change management results that we've now been analyzing with AI. So since 2014, we've been collecting change challenges, lean coffee questions, a bunch of public opinion polls, and a few surveys. And now with AI, we're able to mash all those things together to create an ongoing state of change management report. So it's not like we have to create a snapshot every year and do it. It's certainly possible, but the cool thing is with AI, and there'll be a link in the description below where you can try out our state of change management custom GPT. You can have it do that stuff for you. So you can ask it things like, what's changed since the first year of results versus the most current year of results? So this idea that you have to rely on some organization to create a static thing is going to go the way of the dodo. Doesn't mean people are going to stop doing this, but it does mean that you can get more specific and better data by asking open-ended questions. So for all of the surveys that we've used since 2014, none of them use rating scales, yes, no, true, false, those types of questions. None of them are related to frameworks or approaches or methods or models or tools, nothing. It's all open-ended questions around where are people getting stuck, what advice do they have, what are they most excited to learn about, and basically how creative you are with your prompts is going to help you analyze the data. So I'm going to go through some of the reports here. You can find these at leanchange.org/research. So you can do any of the surveys there, and there's links to the custom GPTs where you can analyze it. Okay, one of the questions from our surveys was, what are you most excited to learn about? So Agile still is top of mind for people, even though lots of people are calling it new ways of working because they're fed up with Agile, but people are still interested in more flexible, lightweight approaches to change, which is good. The next one, and this is definitely from more recent surveys, is AI and machine learning. So there's a lot of interest around how AI can help change managers do their jobs and how it can help improve our change management practices. And the final one was tools and technology. So there's still people responding around wanting updated tools that can help them with change management or technology that can help them with that as well. Okay, so the question that I prompted GPT with in order to create this was, find the questions related to what people are excited to learn about, group those into themes, and then spit out the top 3 based on which ones you think are the most important for change agents. So that was the same prompt that I used, and then I just basically swapped out the question for the other ones. So the next question was, what is your greatest challenge with change? So I've been collecting these in my workshops since 2014, so screenshots of sticky notes and data from our community and workshops have been fed into this along with the survey. So here's the things that people are struggling with the most. Resource constraints could be anything from people to time to budget, staffing. Could be cases of I'm a solitary change agent doing this at the side of my desk and we don't have budget to hire anybody else. Could be, I'm in a bigger organization and we don't have a PM on this project and we don't have a comms person, so I'm overloaded with stuff. Could be a bunch of things, but either way, there's more work to do than people to do it, which is interesting because when I get into the AI stuff, we can find out how that actually can potentially solve this problem. So the next thing was leadership and support, and this comes up all over the place. This one's always a bit confusing for me, and the reason I say that is if the leaders are asking for change, why do we have to get them to buy in? And nobody has really given me a good answer for that. I understand the sentiment behind it and the importance of it, but for me, this is exactly what co-creation is designed to solve. So you're not trying to get buy-in and support from folks. You're actually building the right change with the people. Then this doesn't become a problem anymore. And the last one was cultural barriers. This could be just about everything. So from my experience, it's usually when we're taking an approach to change that's counter to the organizational norms. There's lots of cases where I've worked on agile transformations where there's a huge difference in the espoused theory that we keep saying, which is we want to be more collaborative, we want to be more agile, but our action does not reflect that. So we're actually using our old values that are completely at odds with agile. So culture barriers could be a whole bunch of things, round peg, square hole, that type of idea. So the next question was, what advice do you have? So this was, what are the biggest learnings that you want to share with your fellow change agents? Again, significance of leadership support, which is important. The curveball I would throw into this one is, for me, it's more important that they're not opposed to it as opposed to directly supporting it. And obviously that's contextual, but I find really, if the leaders are the last to know or they're surprised with bad news, that's what they don't like. They don't care what framework you use. They don't care how you go about the change. They have a goal or an objective. They'll help out when they need to, but I think we forget that leaders at the top of the organization, the jobs are stressful and very difficult, so they don't not care. Sometimes they just don't have the time. So I think as long as you're making sure that you're doing things that short, punchy information that gives them the information they need, be brief, be bold, be gone, I think it solves some of that problem as well. The next thing was the value of stakeholder engagement. And yes, I would agree with this, depending if stakeholder means everybody affected by the change. Sometimes we confuse stakeholder as meaning the project sponsor or the top leader, and we forget about the people who have to live with the day-to-day consequence. So if we consider all of those people stakeholders, then yes, obviously that engagement is super duper important. And the last one was benefits of agile approaches. So just even looking through some of the raw data, which you can access at leanchange.org/research, is people value this iterative approach where we're not planning 6, 8, 10, 12 months in advance. We do have a vision, we have a direction that we want to go, but we're only really focused on what we have to do right now to move things a little bit forward. All right, so let's get into more about this AI stuff. So this is definitely showing up in more recent responses, but this was surprising to me. I was surprised this many people had a positive view about AI because a lot of the things you read are fear-based or resistance-based, if you want to call it that, where change agents will say things like, AI can't replace me. It can't do what a human can do. I don't like it. I'm rejecting the organ kind of thing. So it was surprising to see that this many folks support it. Very small percentage had a negative view of AI, and most were neutral. Some people didn't type a long enough comment. They might have just put, it's good, which ChatGPT just ignored. But it's interesting to see the sentiment around AI. I would say, just looking at the data, the things people believe it can help with the most are basically what I'm doing here with analysis, learning how to prompt it to make sense of what's happening with the change, sentiment analysis, document creation, comms, stuff like that. AI can do much more, which I'm not going to get into in this video, but at least there's a positive view of it. Now let's move into my favorite thing, the 70% failure claim. And I can already hear the groans from people saying, oh my God, stop talking about this. I've been collecting this since 2014 when I started writing about, I don't think this 70% thing is, number one, accurate, and two, I don't think it's very useful. It's like, if I'm going to go skydiving, but 70% of the time the parachutes don't open, am I still going to bother to try? Maybe that's a bit extreme. But anyway, 82% of the people are neutral or disagree or are mixed. Now, a very small percentage actually disagree with the claim, but the key thing is only 18% of the people believe it's accurate, and some of those answers around the people who are in that bucket are things like, well, it was part of my training, oh, I've read a few of the surveys, it kind of reflects my personal experience, so definitely not scientific, but I'm going to get into some of the reasons why people have answered this 70% failure claim question the way that they did. So most of the answers were, when you get into that 82%, the overall vibe was change is too nuanced to say people agree or disagree. So we can't break down these complex responses into these buckets. So I had to ask ChatGPT a few different ways to analyze this. And what it came up with was, I asked it, could you take the ones that are neutral or don't agree and find out what the patterns are for what it is that they're talking about? So the first one was complexity of measurement. And this was around change is too complex to distill down into a binary outcome, essentially. So it's too complex to measure, so we can't simplify it with a yes, it didn't work, or no, it didn't work. The next one was around the failure criteria. So if we didn't meet all the goals, is it a failure? If we met some of the goals, is it okay? How are we measuring it, and where did that number come from? So there's some skepticism around how organizations measure their changes, and this is going to be different across organizations. So it's really hard to correlate because it's really up to the eye of the beholder. I would say any of the large agile transformations I've worked on, I would say all of them quote unquote failed by the stock definition of did it work? Yes or no? Did it meet all the objectives? Yes or no? But there were tons and tons of victories and changes to the culture that happened over the course of all these types of things. And for me, that's a win, because even if we're taking a few small learnings and people like coming to work again, that's a victory for me. So the next one is around the same type of idea, which is partial agreement with the criteria for success or failure. So this is kind of the running joke. The status report's green, but nothing's different. And I think we've all been part of those types of changes. But either way, a couple of these are around, it's really, we have to think about the criteria, because the whole answer to that question hinges on how we choose to measure it in our organizations. Another one of the patterns was about complexity and uncertainty increasing the more people that get involved with the change. So, how do you compare a change that was successful or failed based on two different organizations doing two completely different types of changes at different scales? None of the reports seem to factor that stuff into them. So basically, the bigger the change, the harder it gets. This one's interesting, lack of planning and measurement. So when we don't make a change in official project, it's hard to measure, adjust, and align people and learn from that process. And I think this is just day in and day out. This is how organizations operate. So all organizations, I think, change all the time. Think of how many handshake deals you've had in a hallway where something about a process isn't working right. So you get 4 or 5 people together who kind of own that process, if you want to call it that, and you come up with something new on the spot and it's better. That's not an official change project. It might have made things better, but those things are happening constantly in organizations, and it's not like we're going to go away and create a great big plan and a bunch of measurements for something so simple and roll it out across the organization. So, I've always said the thing that kills the change is a budget and a schedule and a name, because then you focus on the budget, the schedule, and the name, and you lose sight of the reasons why you wanted to start it in the first place. This one's, I guess, similar to the first one, that it's a radical oversimplification to try to measure change in a binary way, and having that based on predetermined plans. It's not like you don't do change ROI, but you can't guess. And I've seen so many projects that they reverse engineer the business case at the end. So, hey, look, we met the objective, which doesn't make any sense. But this one is all around, for me, you can't see the future. So that's really my opinion about this 70% thing, because it assumes that you can decide up front what the outcome should be and what the measurements are going to be. This one, I guess, sums up all of them. You could say all 7 of these are pretty closely related to each other. And if I had to distill them down, they're all about changes too complex to make it a binary success or failure outcome. And we can't accurately predict and plan our way to the outcome that we want, because things are going to change. And some of the lessons from what do you want to learn about, what's been working for you, what advice do you have, is moving away from these bigger, more linear step phase-driven approaches for change and more towards feedback ones. Now, I know that's obviously how I talk about change constantly, but the questions that were asked in this survey were all these open-ended questions. Tell me what you want to learn. Tell me what your biggest piece of advice is. There's nothing in there related to agile or design thinking or lean startup or lean change or anything like that. So it's interesting to see these patterns kind of pop out. Okay, so you can always find this at leanchange.org/research. That's going to be all the surveys and ad hoc things that we've been running over the years. Now, some of this stuff, because we've been collecting this for so long, is in different systems. So we're in the process of moving everything into one system. And then you can do cool things like you can ask our GPT, tell me what people think about AI and change management. Tell me what barriers people have towards change. You can specifically ask it to just generate certain types of responses from certain areas of the survey. You can slice it by community. So we tend to ask people, do you most closely associate with the agile community, the change community, HR, OD, whatever it is? And all of those instructions will be at leanchange.org/research. The surveys are always free to do. The data to view is always free. And there's also links there to our custom GPTs where you can check it out and you can create your own reports. So remember to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.